Is it visible to you, all of you?
Yes.
Okay. So these are our two other protocols which is supposed to be used for making an integration between service provider applications. Like as we know that Okta is now behaving like an identity provider where all the information related to the users and all the identities are stored in the Okta itself, and they are authenticated all of those identities with the help of our Active Directory, where our actual repository are stored. So the Active Directory which we created so far, that is on-prem Active Directory. On-prem means that is the external one which is stored in somewhere in the server side. And some directories which the Okta is having, so these are called as the universal directories. So the Okta universal directory means the directory which the Okta is having itself in the browser or in the cloud. Okay. So right now we understood that Okta is behaving like an identity provider, and rest of the applications which we are supposed to onboard to assign our users, these are called service provider applications. So how those both the entities are supposed to be interconnect with each other with the help of such kind of protocols like SWA, SAML, OAuth and OID. Okay, so now today we are talk about some OAuth and the OpenID Connect. What exactly it means and how they are supposed to behave. Okay, my screen is visible now.
Yes.
It mentioned OAuth 2.0. Is it clear to you? I think.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so OAuth 2.0 basically means it's a version. 2.0 is a version of OAuth. So basically, OAuth is used for authorization framework, which enables a third-party applications. Third-party applications like, as I mentioned, you SAP application, Salesforce application, ServiceNow application, Zoom application, whatever the application it is. So it is basically used for authorization framework to enable third-party application to obtain limited access of HTTP services. Limited access means the access which is supposed to be given by our service provider or used by or authenticated by our identity provider. And it is behaving like on the behalf of the resource owner. So who is the resource owner? Resource owner is client. We are supposed to be the resource owner. So like as I'm giving you an example of that thing, like if you entered or created your account in Gmail or the Google, so Google have their lots of services. Okay, so let me share you one thing. What Google has. OAuth 2.0. It allows the resource owner, on the behalf of the resource owner, is supposed to be approval to interact between the rest of the applications which is supposed to be there. Okay, so there are some kind of grant and the privileges is supposed to be mentioned in the OAuth 2.0. Okay, so without any grant or without any thing, we can't supposed to maintain this integration. We can't do to maintain this on the behalf of you. Resource owner is supposed to be work on those areas. Okay, so there are some types of the roles which I'm supposed to tell you in the OAuth is defined. There are resource owner, resource server, client, and the authorization server. These four entities are supposed to be the role in which OAuth is supposed to be happen. How the OAuth is supposed to be work, how this protocol is supposed to be work. The protocol is supposed to be work on four entities: resource owner, resource server, client, and the authorization server. Now, who is the resource owner? The entity capable of granting access to the protected resource. The entity capable of granting access to the protected resource that we called it the resource owner. When the resource owner is a person, it is referred to as an end user. Like resource owner means we. We are supposed to be accessing a thing from the protected resource side, okay, which is stored somewhere. Now the resource server, the server which is hosting the protected resource. There is a place where all your documents are stored. We call it as a protected resource. Okay, where all the information is stored, we call it as a protected resource. Who want to access this thing? Resource owner. And who is hosting that the protected resource? That is resource server. Okay. And who is the client? Client is basically an application making the protected resource request on the behalf of the resource owner and with the authorization side. Like if I am going to access something from the Google account or something, okay, which I have already a Google account. Now I want to access that YouTube account. Okay, so I'm not supposed to enter or register in the account of the YouTube or not to create any account in the YouTube. Why? Because my account with the Google is totally working on the behalf of myself. Okay, and where the all the information is stored, my all the information, all the files, all the videos are stored in the YouTube channel. Okay, so I want to access that. Okay, so I am becoming a resource owner, or who is taking this all the responsibility or storing all the things, that is becoming the resource server. Okay, now I want an access on that area, so I need an application. So that application becoming a Google, that is becoming an application, that becoming a client. Okay, now what the client will do, it will require a authorization server also, where all the information, all the things are supposed to be verified. So authorization server basically a server which is issuing an access token to the client after successfully authenticating the resource owner and obtaining authorization. Now, if I'm entering my Google account to the Google, so the resource owner, okay, so the resource owner issuing a set of token, which we called it the access token, on the behalf of my identity, and to gave it to that the particularly resource server, that this person is totally authorized. Now you can give access to that person a particularly file or video, whatever he is required. Okay, so how this all the things are supposed to be work in the behind of OAuth authentication. Okay, let me clear with this picture also. Okay, now you easily understand what I am trying to say. Okay, now an application. In the first thing, what the first step, from the application side, the authorization request goes to the user, the resource owner. Authorization request means try to enter your username and the password. Okay. Now the resource owner is requesting for authorization grant. Like, give me the grant, let me go inside the area. So the authorization grant has to be requested back to the authorization server, where authorization server need to check the user profile, his credentials, his identity. On the behalf of authenticity, getting from the authorization server, on the behalf of authorization grant, it will release an access token. Access token basically the term which contains the whole information about that the particularly user. That user is authenticated from that the authorization server. If when the client gets this access token, it response back to the resource owner. What resource owner will receive? The resource server will receive an access token. It contains the user information with his authenticity, that the user is authenticated. Once it finds that the user is authenticated or checking that the request
You need to cover
access
yourself.
token. Hello?
Oh, sorry, not
Yes?
you. Not you, please. Sorry.
Okay, okay. So once the resource server receives that access token, which contains the user authenticity and the ID of that the particular user, it will understand that that user is genuine and he is trying to access some of that the files or whatever the things which is stored in the resource server. Now he opens up the gate from the protected resource for the client. So this is how the flow of the OAuth is supposed to be work, whether we are entering or whether we are supposed to enter our credential on any of the account and grab the information on his protected site. Okay, so these types of activity
Um,
is supposed to be working
Karan,
on the behalf of. Yeah,
so in OAuth, like OAuth is responsible for the authorization only, right?
yes, yes,
The authentication has to be done from application side.
yes. So the authorization, basically the thing what is supposed to be here. Authorization means you are supposed to be authorized to get access the protected site or the protected file which is stored in the resource server. Okay, so these OAuth basically works on only on the authorization area. Okay, and the authorization means basically you are authorized to do that activity or you are authorized to get the information on the particular area. Okay, so it will require the authorization grant. Okay, it will check the authorization grant, what grant type you are supposed to sending or receiving, and how you are accessing the access token. So basically, that the OAuth works on authorization and it require in the form of user authentication or sorry user authorization in the form of access token. Okay, so once we receive the
Right,
access token,
because in case if the user want to be authorized for particular action, first that
hmm,
user needs to be authenticated. So for example, like if for any application, if we select
hmm,
like OAuth, so we are
hmm.
expecting like application will going to do the authentication on their side, right?
Yes, yes. So yes, suppose that area is also fine, but the thing it is supposed to be like in the OAuth, like whether we are supposed to entering our credentials. So on that time, the user is already been authenticated, but he need to be authorized to get those information. Okay, so yes, you are correct about that part. It is automatically, not automatically, it is authenticated on that the client side basically. Okay, once the resource owner entering his credential.
Okay.
Okay,
And in SAML, both authentication and authorization does happen, right?
yes, yes. In SAML, what exactly the things is in the SAML it is happen. In SAML, there are two things are supposed to be there. Okay, there are two types of initiation are to be there. Like either you are supposed to be go with the authentic identity initiation, or either you are supposed to be go service provider initiation flow. So how does thing it is to be there? User in SAML, what the thing it is to be there? We are supposed to be interconnect both the entities like identity provider and the service provider. We are supposed to be make a connection between both of them with the help of exchanging of metadata in the form of Excel. So on that time, what is supposed to be happen? We require an authenticity, a certification of the authenticity from that the service provider to identity provider. Once it is supposed to be happen, both the entities are interconnected. Once both the entities are interconnected, user is supposed to be jump over on those area of the service provider application. Okay. Actually, in the SAML, what happened? In the SAML, only the exchanging of the information between two entities, identity provider and service provider, it is supposed to be there. And user is playing like a role who is making supposed to be happen. How he is supposed to be go inside in the particularly area. So his authenticity is supposed to be checked in the service provider end or either on the identity provider. Okay.
Okay. Alright. So, for example, like if application do not have the capacity of authenticating, then we can suggest SAML. But in case if they have their own identity provider, like their own local identity provider, we can suggest OAuth,
Yeah,
right?
if they are having, just repeat your question.
Sorry.
Just repeat your question. Repeat.
Okay. So, for the SAML, like we can suggest SAML to those applications, like where just we need both authentication and authorization to be done. Like application is not capable of doing both of the activities, but what can be suggested to those applications which have their own authentication terms? Like they do have their own identity provider for authentication of the users, right?
Hmm. Yeah, but the thing it is supposed to be over here. Basically, those protocols, as I told you earlier, where we exactly required those protocols. Okay, like majorly in the case of OAuth, whenever we required such kind of applications which are supposed to be like mobile applications or API service applications are supposed to be there. Okay, so we suggest to go with that the OAuth protocol. Okay, because OAuth majorly works on those applications which are having the APIs. Okay, like in your mobile phone. Okay, so you are supposed to be having lots of food applications or this Amazon, Flipkart type of applications are there, and grocery applications are supposed to be there. So in your mobile, majorly the thing it is to be that you are downloading only those uh, organizations API. Okay, you are hitting the particularly API. You are hitting the particularly food. Okay, from any of the vendor. Okay, you are hitting his catalog. Okay, in the form of API. Okay, so on those area generally the OAuth is supposed to be work. Okay, because you are not supposed to be registering yourself in those particularly applications. Your Gmail account or your Gmail credentials or your mobile number supposed to be work on those areas, and that becoming your authorization to rest of the application. Okay, so on those areas generally we use OAuth. Okay, and where we are supposed to use OIDC, like if we have such kind of applications like single page applications or web based application or any native based applications are there. So on those area we are generally suggest our client or customer to use OIDC. Okay, why we are supposed to tell them? I will tell you. So on this area we are telling them to choose that protocol of OIDC because that is much helpful and powerful than the SAML add-on. Okay, on that time. And where we are supposed to use the SAML, if we know that thing, like both the applications are supposed to be interconnected with the help of that kind of protocols, or where we require that the uh, person authenticity has to be marked on, or either the user is supposed to be go with any of the flow. Like either he go with the identity provider side, so his identity has to be checked, or authenticated on the identity provider side, or he have the capability to go with the service provider application, then again his identity is supposed to be in the backend checked by the identity provider. Okay, so on that side we are suggesting them to go with the SAML 2.0. Okay, so there are, as I told you, that each and every protocol having their own capability. Okay, so according to the functionality and the use of the particularly application, we are suggesting our customer to go with that protocol. Okay, because each and every protocol having their own features, own capability to do something different. Okay, so that's why I'm saying to you over here, like if you see in the detail in the explanation of the steps which is followed by the diagram, as I told you earlier over here, it is mentioned that when an application requests authorization to access service resource from the user. Okay, if the user is authorized the request, the application receives an authorization. Okay, so you can see this side. Okay, so we have a Google platform, we have a client platform. Okay, so it's saying the application request authorization to access service resources from that the user side. Service request from that the user side. Okay, user is basically the client, your website or whatever the thing. Okay, you are logging in your client website and you are accessing the Google platform. Okay, so the application request to access token from the authorization server with the help of API and presenting authentication on its own identity and authorize the grant. So once it is to be done, so the authorization grant has supposed to be marked on those areas. You see in this picture, the third step is authorization grant. On the basis of authorization grant, the authorization server reflect back the access token to the application. Okay.
What's the
So after
duration of
that,
all the transaction, please? What's the duration of all this transaction? Is this something that happens like parallel or in series? How does it really typically work? You send it comes back, you send again like that. Is it something you keep doing often or?
so these direction are basically the things which is supposed to be in the backend. It is happening. Whether we are supposed to accessing or want an grant from that the authorization server. So like these things you are doing in the in your daily general access part. Okay, on your authenticity and on your authorization. But it is not to be figured it out just because of the things, because there are lots of things is running behind that area. Okay, you are accessing, you want to access something, you wanted to grab an information on the protected site or somewhere. So these types of activity are supposed to be marked, but in the backend area. Backend area basically means you are not seen anywhere in your what is your access token, how your identity, how your credential becomes an access token. Okay, in the internet you can see. Okay, so on this directions are basically tells that how the things are supposed to be happen in the backend. Through that way, you are supposed to be accessing any of that the file or the resources in the platform. Okay, so basically in the OAuth, access token is the major point. Without this access token, you are not supposed to be get or go inside to the protected resource server side. The hackers. So who are the hackers? Hackers are basically grabbing that the user's access token. They have an eye on those access token. Without the access token, they are not supposed to be enter any of that the resource server where all the information are stored for any of that the platform, either it is Google, Facebook, or whatever. Okay, so they are having in a dark web, they are having an eye. They are simultaneously running around to getting then an access token of an user or an administrator, whatever. They are looking ahead for an access token. They are modifying, they are coding on for making that access token. They are randomly keep trying to make an access token. Once they get the access token, they go inside to the any organization, any banking platform, any hospital platform, any defense platform to get inside those areas, to get all the information what they are clearly looking for. To go inside that the user's account itself. Okay, because access token is the only things which is supposed to be get on the behalf of that the client, on the behalf of that the particularly user, because access token contains user's attribute, user signature, and users all the identity about that the users what he's looking for and what he's trying to access on which endpoint you are. Okay, so this is the majorly the critical part which in the OAuth which is looking ahead or which is supposed to be keep an eye of and hacker on those areas. Once you have any person's access token, you can get his account. Okay. Now there is one more thing which is comes in the picture, grant type. Okay. So which grant type is supposed to be work on the authorization server, and on the behalf of this grant type, how this access token is supposed to be created or generated from the authorization server. So now question raised again. First the question it is supposed to be what type of protocol is used for which application. Now what type of grant type is supposed to be used by for the authorization server to get an access token for our client or application. Okay, so now we have grant types. We have four types of grant types.
So,
Okay. Yes.
so all the protocols and all the authorization process to enable that a client or a user get the access token is just simply saying there are layers of securities and that the right person have access to that access token. Is that basically what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is all it is. It's a layer of the things, how the things are supposed to be created to make a flow, about that thing that that person is supposed to be authorized to get those things. So these are supposed to be the step by steps. You can say in your term it is layer, that is also fine. So in my term it is a flow, or you can say it's a security area where all the things are supposed to be checked and marked and verified. Okay. Now the things comes to the authorization grant. What grant has supposed to be require or respond, or you can say what type of grant an application request for the authorization server, and how the authorization server send back to the client an access token on which grant type. So we have now four type of grant types. As you know, there are four steps cover obtaining an authorization grant and the access token. So the authorization grant type depend on the method used by the application to request authorization, and the grant type supported by that the APIs, only the API. So OAuth2 defines four grant types, each of which is useful in different cases. So if you don't know about that the API, So I'll tell you what exactly that the API, and with a example in your daily life. Like if you entered in a restaurant or you ordered something, so who will come to you? A waiter comes to you or a chef comes to you to take your order? Generally, as you know, always a waiter comes to you, take your order. Once you take your order, you get back to the chef and tells that I required this type of food for my customer. Now chef prepare all this item and give it back to you? No, he will give it back to the waiter, and waiter delivered all the items to your table. So now that API, now between you and the chef, the waiter is the API. So the API are supposed to be work to get an information and deliver to the right place and get all the information on those area and deliver to you back. So this is the API working things. In your live scenario, the waiter is your API. So whatever the person who is in the middle of all your connectivity to the endpoint, so that will the API. Like between you and your delivery partner, either the Amazon or whatever the things. So these applications which are you entering, which you have already in place in your mobiles, these are the APIs. Where you are supposed to be orders from the catalog and go for shopping and make a transaction with the banking partners. So the banking is also with the API who will take care of your all the account. Okay, once the order is confirmed, and it will go back to the endpoint, Amazon or the Flipkart. And the delivery partner is also an API on those areas. So they will deliver all the items to you. So how the things are supposed to be work, how these things, what type of the grant, what type of the way, how we are supposed to request a food to the waiter. So that is becoming our grant. How we are supposed to tell what type of the things we require. So that will becoming a grant in the term of this flow. So there are authorization code flow grant type. There is implicit grant type, resource owner, password, credential. We call it ROPC grant type. And there is client credential grant type. So what exactly it is happen in the grant type? In the authorization code, we generally use with server-side applications. Server-side applications means the application which are running on the server, and we call it as a server-side application. There are lots of applications which are running on the server side, not on the client side. Now there is one more thing. How you justify, how we tell that, how will you differentiate these are the server-side application and which are the client-side application? Now it is a very basic thing. The applications which are hosted on the server. Okay, server means the organization server areas. Okay, so those applications we are generally call it as server-side applications, and those applications which are directly engaged with the client on the client area. It means client system, or you can say his client local machines or their internals client application. So we generally call it as a client side application. Okay. So whenever we are touching down any of the server side application, we can use that the authorization code flow or authorization code grant. Okay. Now, what is implicit grant type? Implicit grant type is used with the mobile applications or web applications. Okay, where the application run on the user device. User device means we have our computer, we have our laptops, we have our mobile devices, we have our tabs. So these are our own devices. So whatever we required, we go to the particularly application or any of that the browsing page of any of that the applications. So on those area, the implicit code flow grant type is used. Okay. Now resource owner password credentials. Where it is supposed to be used? It is used with trusted application such as those owned by the service itself. Service itself means who is providing you the services, they are running that type of or hosting that type of particularly applications. So we call it as a resource owner password credentials. Resource owner. So now the things is come to be the resource owner. Now who is the resource owner? So I told you earlier, who is the resource owner? Resource owner basically an entity which is capable of granting access to the protected resources. It means us, like we are supposed to be the resource owner. So now if we are the resource owner, so what exactly this grant type? Resource owner password credentials. So the resource owner is entering his password or his credentials on the particularly trusted application which is running by their own service provider applications. Okay. Now it is client credential.
So
Now
it
go.
means so it
Mhm.
means that for resource owner to grant the access, we have to use our credential password into the
Yes,
application before we can grant the access. Okay.
yes. And in the behalf of this client credential, which is used with application API accesses. The application API accesses means the applications which are supposed to be running for only for the API based. The applications which are running only whether the API is accessible or not. Then these applications are supposed to be run. So on those area, we are supposed to be enter client credentials, means the client side. Like if you are entering any of your credentials, like you are having your own applications and you are entering your Gmail account over there. So over there, your Gmail account is authenticating for your particularly applications or the API. So those credentials are supposed to be checked and marked. So on this way, the client credential grant type are supposed to be used. Now, a question raised mostly or generally what grant types are supposed to be marked or used in our daily projects or the client side. So I tell you the authorization code and the implicit code grant type are generally used majorly. Okay. Now I'll tell you this OAuth and the OIDC protocols. These two protocols generally are or majorly asked by the interviewer. Major, most of them. And they are having a lots of questions only on those of two of these protocols. Firstly, they will ask you, could you please differentiate between OAuth and the OIDC? And do you know the grant types? And if you know the grant types, so which grant type is generally used or why used? Okay, so you are supposed to be tell those answers or you can supposed to be give the right answer which I'm telling to you right now with lots of examples. Okay, like what grant type is supposed to be used and for which purpose. Okay, and what type of that the flow is supposed to be, you are supposed to be know about that thing, what type of the flow which is behaving in the OAuth. and then in the OIDC. Okay, so these two protocols are highly in demand in the interview time, or they are supposed to be highly in demand whether you are working with your client also, or your customer also, whether you are engaging with them to onboard such applications or their own applications. If your customer having their own application, how could you suggest them to go with which protocol? If you are go with that protocol, so what type of grant time you are supposed to suggest them? So that you need to understand what exactly the user's application it is, and is this application is supposed to be the mobile application, native application, web application. Accordingly, you are supposed to suggest them that protocol is supposed to work, and this current type is successfully enabled for you. Okay, so these types of the things you need to consider at the time of your projects and the interviews. Now this is the authorization code flow. This is the first picture of the authorization code flow. Okay, it is a very complicated architecture for the first time, but if you understand it step by step, so it's becoming a very easy architecture to understand what is exactly trying to say. Okay, if a client or if a resource owner, okay, just check only or see only two pictures right now. One is application client and see only authorization servers API box. Just focus on two boxes. One is left, one is right. Forget about the middle boxes. Okay. Once the client goes to the authorization server and user requested the request, okay, on the behalf of the authorization server, it will revert back to the authorization code grant, the third point. Then on the behalf of that thing, he access the token request. On the behalf of that thing, authorization server give the access token grant. Okay, this is the first thing. Now see the middle picture, user and the user agent, which is your web browser. Like if I'm a user, I'm go to the web browser and accessing for user authorization application. So on the behalf of that thing, the authorization server revert back to the browser with the authorization code grant, and on the behalf of that thing, access token request generated and the access token grant is supposed to be marked. So this is basically the authorization code flow. Now I'll go back to the authorization code flow, what exactly it is. Now see, authorization code flow, what is saying that user with server side application. It is used with server side application. So now you can see the server side application, authorization server. It's a server side application. Okay. So what I'm trying to say over here, these are some of the code flow or the authorization code flow, or it is supposed to be the flow which is under the OAuth 2.0. Okay, that's why I'm saying to you, OAuth 2.0, it's not a simple thing whether you are supposed to be do immediately it will work. We need to check our API also. We need to check what type of the value is passing in the API. Oh, sorry, access token. Okay, so we need to mark our access token, and that access token having a validity, that access token having a mark of the user credibility. So these all the things are supposed to be checked and marked whether we are supposed to do 2.0, OAuth 2.0 flow. So what exactly means that the access token? So access tokens are the credentials. These are basically the credentials used to access protected resources. As I told you, we required protected resources. So how the things are supposed to be capable? We are capable to grab those things information with the help of access token. So how this access token it is? Access token is a string representation and authorization issued to the client. What is a string? String is a data type. As I mentioned you in the last time session, in the profile editor, whether I'm seeing you the profile editor of the Okta user, it mentions over there the data type, what type of the data type the user value it is having, user attribute is having, like first name having the data type string. Okay, and the value is any person name. Okay, so it is in the form of string, which is opaque for the client, and the token represents specific scope. Now, token is also coming with a scope. Okay, it's not like your token is valid for each and every application. Your token is not supposed to be publicly. It's a private thing for each and every user. Okay, so every token comes with a scope. Like your identity is having a scope. Like Selvi identity is not work for Anne and Anne work identity is not work for Muskan. Okay, each person ID has different scope. Okay, similarly, a token represents a specific scope and the duration also, and the duration of access. If I am giving Selvia, if I am giving an access token for the Selvia for the particularly 15 minutes, so after this 15 minutes, her token is supposed to be expired. Okay, so after expiring that token, she is not able to authorize to go inside any of the platform. She is not supposed to be authorized to go and access that particularly application. Okay, so every token having a scope and that is having an access also, which is supposed to be granted by the resource owner and enforced by the resource server and authorization server. Okay, so now you need to focus on the 4 entities right now: authorization server, resource server, and the resource owner. That is granted by the resource owner. Okay, resource owner means B, which is granted by the resource owner and enforced by. Enforce means who is enforcing to make a scope, who is enforcing to make a duration, who is supposed to telling to the resource owner, source server and the authorization server. Okay, so these we called it as a access token. Now there is a one brother of the access token. It is a refresh token. Refresh token are credential used to obtain the access token. Okay, we have the access token. We know now we know that access token. What exactly is access token? Now we want what is refresh token. As it name it is.
Question, Karan.
Yeah, yeah.
So, this access token, what is the format? Is it some sort of
It's an
password given
I tell you. It's
encrypted, or is it
yeah.
just okay?
I'll tell you. I'll give you a picture of it. Access token always comes in a string format. It's basically a JSON. JSON means JavaScript web tokens. So basically, this access token comes in alphanumerical format. Okay, Alphanumerical format means, I'll tell you also the image to understand that part. I'll show you in the practical side also. No problem. You see this picture. I'll show you. Okay, no problem. I'll show you whether we are supposed to do some lab. Okay, so basically the access tokens comes in a very big picture. Okay, it is a format of these types of alphanumeric things. Okay, how it is supposed to be. Okay, now you are able to see that thing. Okay, little bit of blur for you, I think so. For me, it's a totally alphanumerical type of script, or you can say that totally alphanumeric type of words are supposed to be there. Okay, which contains lots of information. It's in an encrypted form. Then it is going to be decrypted to get an information. Okay, so these access tokens are like in a multiple long length string. String means basically data type. Okay, so data type in the form of a string we call it in the form of anything which is comes in the string, like numeric digits, letters, special characters, all the things. So that is a complete bigger length of the access token. This access token is supposed to be encrypted, then it is supposed to be decrypted. Then the user is supposed to be get an information, get a code over there. Okay, I'll show you also this thing, whether we are supposed to do that type of activity in the API part. So we will clearly understand how this access token or the JSON web token look like. Okay, I'll show you. Look. Once I complete this refresh token, okay. So the refresh tokens are, as I told you, it is credential used to obtain the access token. So the refresh tokens are used to issued. Refresh tokens are issued to the client by the authorization server and used to obtain a new access token when your current access token becomes invalid or expired. So the two things have to be there. Access tokens is used to obtain the, refresh tokens basically used to obtain the access token. First thing. Second thing, it is issued by the client by the authorization server. Okay, when your access token either is expired or invalid. Three things. Okay, till now you only understand these three things. Refresh token always comes after the access token. If your access token is over, his scope is over, his duration is over, now you are requesting for another token, then you are supposed to be get a refresh token from that area. Okay, so that we call it as a refresh token. Now what is OpenID Connect and how it is work? So now it is a completely different thing, not exactly that the OAuth. Now OpenID is basically, it's a superset of OAuth. What we did in the OAuth 2.0, so it is the upper hand of OAuth 2.0. Why? In the OAuth 2.0, we only understand that the authorization. Now OpenID Connect, we understand on the area of authentication plus authorization both with the help of two types of the APIs. We call it REST authentication. Okay. So the OpenID Connect allows for client for all type of applications, which include your JavaScript, which include your native base application, which include your mobile application, which include your single page application. So every type of application, every type of mobile applications, or any type of the web-based application or browser-based application, you are supposed to use that OpenID Connect. In the last and the fourth point, it is mentioned that where your identity plus authentication plus your authorization are supposed to be taken. So it means that your OpenID Connect is supposed to be happen. Okay. So OpenID Connect contains all the information of the user, not only his authorization, his credential it will also take, his authenticity it will also take, and this user is which platform it is authorized, it will also take that also this authorization. So the whole the things are supposed to be work on this OpenID Connect platform. Okay. I'll give you that document to you, all of you guys. You just read it down for once in a while. Okay, just read it thoroughly so you can easily understand what terminologies are supposed to be marked over here, and you can easily understand with the help of these diagrams what exactly terms are you just familiar with the resource owner, authorization server, all these terms. Once you understand that part, you can easily understand in the back end whether we are supposed to do any type of practical on those areas, so you can easily correlate yourself what is exactly in the behind of this authorization grant, how this is supposed to be happen, or I'll show you in this Okta dashboard also whether we are onboarding such kind of application. So you will see all those grant types are also be defining over there. Okay, so that's it for today. Okay, I want to take much more session. One more, or sorry, I want to also take this session long, but I can't go with that area because it is too much terminologies are with there, and it is a first time it is new to you to understand all of the things. Okay, so once we are supposed to do some practicals, I will stretch all of these sessions quite long. Okay, so for now, I'll just share you this document. You just gone through by tomorrow all of the things. If you are having such doubt on those protocols, all of the four protocols, so you can tell me before we are supposed to do some practical. Okay, okay, a book. Okay, that books is generally like 2 years back. I found on this Amazon. Okay. Because I am the part of this Okta community. So generally whatever the update comes in the Okta, I found it. So there is a very good book which is supposed to be Okta and Okta Administrator available. Yeah. Now this book second version is in the market. So I suggest you to take this book. Okay, it is a very good book of one of that the professional lady who she's having such a good experience in this Okta organization and Okta field. She's also working and she write it down that. Okay, so her name is Lovisa. Okay, so you just now second edition is in the market right now. There is lots of things comes up in the market with this book. So it's better for you to either they are having Kindle and the paperback format. Okay, it's in dollar and it's also in India. It's in some rupees. Okay, So my suggestion you, if you wanted to become a good champ in you just grab this and start learning from the first of this lecture. Okay,
Okay, thank you.
Quick
it's a
question.
very good.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
very
Quick
good.
question, Karen. Please, is there
Yeah.
a way we can? I think I've asked about this before, that we can
Uh-huh.
have the this Okta student guide. The reason why I'm
Uh-huh.
asking is that I know we've done a couple of things for the past 3 weeks now, but
Uh-huh.
it's like I seems it's like I'm everywhere. I'm trying to understand. Okay, this is what we've got done. So it's like I'm following you blindly because it's like this is what you're teaching me, and then you're training us for. If I understand very well, you're training us for Okta administration, our administrator, sorry. But again, I'm looking at, okay, what have I done? So far, so good. Take, for example, I'm preparing my mind while I'm going through this training for like interview, for like,
Mhm.
okay, this is my responsibility as an Okta administrator. And because we are new to this, we really want to go in depth about what we've gone so far. Take, for example, when I said, okay, do you mind if I share my screen? I'm trying to kind of show you a sample of what I'm looking for so that I know
Okay.
this is a topic with so that I can have better understanding. Take, for example, I've done cyber
Mm-hmm.
act training and
Mm-hmm.
we have this training content. Explain the content of what we're going to do all through, and then step
This
by
is
step, this
this
is
is
what we
this
need to
is this
achieve.
is no, this is the cyber art training material.
I know. I'm talking about in Okta training. Can we have like a training content? Because again,
Okay,
we've
okay,
done
okay,
Active
okay.
Directory, we're talking
Fine, fine.
about OAuth now. What is going to be our
I
next
got
thing
you.
so that we know this is what we've done so far. This is what we need to do next. So
Correct,
that
correct,
when,
correct.
so that you don't, so that Karen will not say we are done, and then I believe that we are done when we are not done. Okay, so
No, 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 not
and,
like that.
literally,
Uh,
yeah, I
It's
just
not.
want to have
It's
that.
it's not like that. If I am not supposed to be tell my student. Even I am not following exact format which is given by any of the institutions so far, because the thing it is to be that if I am talking you about the content about that the introduction with SSO, now talk about that the identity introduction, what you mean by the workforce identity, what you mean by the managers and group. So like the things, according to me, first things comes is over there. We need to understand the Okta first. Then we need to understand how we create our Active Directory, how we onboard or sync our user from Active Directory to the Okta. Then we are supposed to understand the user profile and the groups. Okay. Then we supposed to understand about the universal directory groups and the user management, as I told you also. Then it comes to the application integration. When it comes to the application integration, it will comes to the all the protocols which are supposed to be there in the to help us to make the application integration. Then it is comes to the security area. As I told you, there are three things: application integration, security, and the workflow. Those the rules and policies all are comes in the security tab. Okay. Once that is completed, then it is supposed to be comes under there. These all the things are very generic content which I have it, which I take it from some of the institution. Then it is comes to the API. API is also comes under the security tab. Okay. The end user support is the last thing. Troubleshooting is the last thing. Okay. So what I am telling to you, that I will show you